You're not a real Jew, Benji. You do know that, right? A white kid sneered. He was in his mid-teens, short and overweight. Ironically, I looked more Jewish than he did. His skin was pale, almost European, while mine was a light honey brown and my hair curled tightly. I am a Jew. My mother is from Israel. She's more Jewish than your entire family, I shot back. The kid's face tightened. His parents were European Jewish converts, what my mother called $5 Jews, referencing those who claimed false native ancestry just to reap benefits meant for Native Americans. There were many like them. Europeans who converted to Judaism, changed their names to something Jewish, and claimed to be the original Jews. But as my mother often said, true Jews were Middle Eastern. Some very dark, some looking exactly like me, not blonde-haired and blue-eyed. Your father's a nigger, so that makes you a nigger. There are no black Jews. Your mother's destroyed her bloodline when she had you, he spat. Before I could think, my fist had already connected with his long, pointed nose. He stumbled back, clutching his face, eyes blazing with rage. I'd never been a fighter. I hated fighting. But after years of being picked on by the white Jewish community, I'd had enough. Nothing I tried, ignoring, reasoning, pleading, ever stopped the bullying. The only thing that seemed to work was punching them in their smug faces. I'm going to tell your father what you did, he said, dabbing at his nose to check for blood. Oh, wait, you don't have one, he taunted. My cheeks burned. Sometimes I hated being half black. I hated having a black father. For some reason, black fathers never seemed to stick around. My life would be so much easier if I were fully Israeli like my mother. His words cut deep, and I couldn't hide it. I longed for a father. I didn't even know what mine looked like. All I had was a name. Like the stereotype, my father had gotten my mother pregnant and then disappeared. In my eyes, he was a coward who didn't deserve my mother or me. But it still hurt to see other kids with loving fathers, a constant reminder of the empty space in my life where a father should be. Look, pretend Jew Benji is gonna cry, the white kid mocked. I wanted to hit him again, harder this time. I balled my fists, fighting the urge. I knew I could destroy him, but doing so would land me in more trouble, and it would break my mother's heart. I loved my mother more than anything. The pain and disappointment I saw in her eyes the last time I got into a fight had broken my heart. I took a deep, calming breath and walked away. Even though I was a couple of miles from home, the walk would do me good. That's what I thought, Black Benji, he shouted after me. I stopped for a moment, fighting the urge to turn around and give him the beating he deserved. But I couldn't stress my mother out like that. She wanted better for me, and she deserved better. I shook my head and kept walking. I had no friends, caught in a strange place. I wasn't Jewish enough for the Jews, who saw me as just another black kid. Like everyone else, they seemed to harbour an inexplicable hatred for black people. And I wasn't black enough for the black kids, who saw me as a white boy, or an Arab pretending to be black. I never understood why anyone would pretend to be black. Didn't they realise how the world viewed black Americans? Even Africans didn't seem to like them. Pretending to be black felt like pretending to be a peasant or an uneducated bum. It made no sense. If I could choose to be anything, I'd want to be like my mother, fully Israeli. Not one of the extreme racist Israelis committing genocide in the name of Judaism, but like my mother, who loves everyone. She'd give up her home for a Palestinian family in a heartbeat. In fact, she was kicked out of Israel by extremists for protesting the genocide and expansion in Gaza. My mother was a saint in my eyes, despising the fake white Jews who had taken over her people's land and culture. I wish people could see the difference and not lump her in with a hateful Zionist regime.
The white man is the devil. They are not the real Jews. They don't belong in Israel. Black people are the true Hebrews,
I heard someone shout. Lost in my thoughts, I hadn't realised I'd wandered into town. This happened often. I'd walk and think, ending up far from where I'd intended. My grandpa used to do the same. He'd always say he let God guide his steps, even claiming that's how he met my grandmother. God led him straight to her. I wonder if God had led me here, wanting me to hear this after what that white kid said. I turned to see a big black man, dressed in an odd, hastily assembled robe. I almost laughed. He looked like a broke ghetto superhero.
"Why are you smiling, Edomite?"
the man shouted, eyes narrowing at me. I stopped, staring at him.
"Don't be scared now, Edomite. I know you're kind. You are the seed of the devil and hate us true Israelites," he yelled, pointing directly at me. I'd no idea what to say. I didn't even know what an Edomite was. People on the street paused, their eyes on me, waiting for a response. "The devil has got his Edomite tongue, brothers," the man mocked.
His group of similarly dressed men laughed. I was sick of being laughed at. Everywhere I went, it was either white Jews or black men mocking me. "I am a true Hebrew. You're just confused descendants of freed slaves spouting hate for attention," I shouted back. The busy street fell silent. Even I was surprised by my outburst.
"Your true racist nature is showing, Edomite. You see how they always reveal themselves when faced with the true blood of the Hebrews," the man proclaimed to the crowd.
I crossed the street and walked over to face them, feeling the eyes of the entire world on me. "Racist?" I shouted as I approached. The man smiled as I drew near.
"Yes, Edomite, that's what you are. Racist. You hate the truth that Israel is black and always will be."
I sighed, never having heard such blatant nonsense. "My father is African American, a descendant of slaves from Mississippi. My mother is a Jew from Israel. How can I be racist when my father is black? You're the one assuming my race based on my appearance." The man scrutinized me, taking in my curly hair and light brown skin. After a moment, his tone softened.
"If your father is truly black like me, then by his blood alone you are a true Hebrew Israelite, my brother. It's okay to be lost and not know who you are. That's why you're here."
He no longer looked at me like I was some ancient enemy, but rather as a newfound brother. He motioned to one of the men nearby, who quickly handed me a pamphlet.
"We are all lost in the woods the Edomites have left us in, brother. Come to our meeting and discover who you really are. There is power in your father's blood, and thus in you," the man said.
He patted my shoulder and smiled before turning to resume his shouting at passers-by. I felt an odd pull toward these people. Maybe it was because they were black, and I craved a connection to that part of me. Or maybe it was the acceptance. I'd spent my entire life feeling unaccepted. But this street preacher had called me his brother and welcomed me into his fold, despite my biracial heritage. To him and his group, my Israeli mother didn't matter. What counted was that my father was black. That was enough for them. This acceptance felt strange, like a blind man seeing the sun for the first time. Initially, it was beautiful. But I soon realized I longed for the familiar darkness. I'd grown comfortable being an outcast, molding my identity around it. I wasn't sure how long I could stand in the light of acceptance. My mother raised me, and I would never deny her or her sacrifices by claiming to be solely black. I wasn't even sure why I cared so much about being accepted by my black side. The black men I came from had abandoned me. I had never met my father and knew nothing of him beyond his name. He didn't deserve the honour of being acknowledged as part of me. As I walked home, I glanced at the pamphlet. It struck me as absurd, their claim that African Americans were the original Hebrews. From what I knew, African Americans like my father were descendants of West Africans, brought over through the transatlantic slave trade. There were no ties to Israel or ancient Hebrew bloodlines. The more I thought about it, the more I realized they were just as lost and desperate for a sense of belonging as I was. Perhaps that's why the black community treated biracial people so harshly. Ostracizing us gave them a sense of power and superiority they had never truly felt. But the joke was on them. While I might not fit in anywhere, I knew my history and culture on my mother's side. I was connected to that lineage and could draw strength from it. I had something they would never have. I was biracial, and though I struggled with my identity, I knew my roots and had been raised in one of my cultures. I wasn't as lost or empty as they were. I couldn't stop thinking about the pamphlet the man had given me. I kept it folded up in my back pocket, pulling it out to sit on the edge of my bed and just stare at it. A lot of what they believed in seemed made up, like it was created to fill some void. But for me, it went deeper than that. He'd called me brother. Once he found out my father was a black man, he spoke to me like I was one of his people. I was embraced as though I were a long-lost brother who had finally found his way home. I was conflicted. Their beliefs seemed like clear nonsense, so different from what my mother had taught me and the way I was raised. It felt like they had invented their doctrine to counter their own identity crisis. For all their bluster and talk, black Americans were just as lost when it came to identity as I was. They clung to religions to fill the gap of having no cultural identity outside of being descendants of slaves. They created these false narratives of being ancient Egyptians or the original Jews to patch the hole in their souls, the emptiness of not knowing who they were or where they fit in. You would think that, of all people, they would understand the emptiness that biracial individuals feel. But instead of embracing us, they abandon us, reminding us that we're not black enough to be like them. They hate us and oppress us. I always found it troubling how a people could survive racial atrocities, only to turn round and inflict the same kind of pain on another group. These Hebrew Israelites were no different. They, the descendants of slaves, had convinced themselves they were God's chosen and the original Jews, just to avoid the emptiness of lacking a cultural backbone, of not accepting that their culture in America was rooted in slavery and oppression. They are a people of pain, a soulful people who have fought for everything they have and are still fighting to find themselves. Maybe I was better off than them simply because I didn't pretend to be something I wasn't. I'm the son of a black man and an Israeli woman, and I'm okay with that. My struggle is with everyone else who seems to hate me for it. Maybe biracial people were God's chosen, and that's why everyone hated us so much. Despite how I felt about their beliefs, it felt good to be accepted for once in my life, to be around my father's people and not be called a half-breed or an Oreo. Despite my doubts and fears, I found myself standing outside the address on the pamphlet. It was an older house in what looked like the hood. The area and the houses around it were as run down as the people who lived there. I guess it's true that you are a reflection of your surroundings. The black Americans in this neighborhood seemed just as abandoned and condemned as the houses that populated their streets. What am I doing here? I whispered to myself. I was extremely light-skinned, with curly hair, standing out like a sore thumb. As if that wasn't enough, I wore clothes that were new, clean, and actually fit. Everything about me screamed that I wasn't from here.
"What are you doing outside our temple, young brother?" a voice boomed from behind me.
I turned to see several black men approaching. They all wore the same old robes as the man who had given me the pamphlet, looking like ghetto superheroes. It was hard not to laugh. I didn't know how to respond, so I dug into my back pocket and pulled out the pamphlet. One of the oddly dressed men looked at it, and then at me.
"Welcome, my half-Edomite brother," the man said. "Don't call him that. He is the seed of his father. He is just as much one of us as you are," another man corrected him.
The first man's dark face looked ashen as he was scolded. I turned to see the man who had given me the pamphlet. He wasn't dressed in the same robes as the others. Instead, he wore jeans and a purple sweatshirt, with Greek fraternity letters on it.
"Forgive me, honourable brother Isus," the first man said.
He and the others bowed their heads in respect. Jesus looked at me and smiled.
"I'm glad you came, little brother," Jesus said.
He embraced me, and I felt strange being hugged by another man. I'd never been embraced like this by anyone except my mother.
"Welcome, brother," the other men echoed.
I couldn't help but smile.
"The meeting is in here,"
Jesus said, motioning toward the house. He gestured for me to follow, opening the door to reveal an interior that was surprisingly clean and well kept, a stark contrast to the house's worn exterior.
"Cleanliness is pleasing to God, little brother. No matter how our outer appearance may look, our souls are clean and our temple reflects this truth," Jesus said.
I pondered his words. Maybe I'd been misjudging these men based on their outward appearance and ridiculous outfits. They seemed very different now in person than they did when shouting on the streets. Inside, the house was huge. It smelled of incense and was decorated with Hebrew symbols. Some of the most beautiful women I'd ever seen sat on a plush white couch. One woman's flawless ebony skin made her look almost unreal. She wore white robes and a scarf that covered her black hair. She smiled at me, her teeth as white as snow on an empty field. Her eyes shone with a light I hadn't seen before. I could feel my cheeks redden. I smiled back and looked at the floor.
"Hebrew women are beautiful, aren't they?"
Jesus said, noticing my reaction. He and the other brothers laughed as they saw me blush, but I could tell they were proud of her and their other Hebrew sisters. Jesus led me down some stairs into their basement. The floors were marble, so clean I wouldn't hesitate to eat off them. It felt like I'd been transported to a different world. The marble walls were painted purple and waxed until they glowed in the soft light. In the centre of the room was a golden chair, adorned with purple pillows. Jesus hurried over to the chair and sat down. I watched as the other men sat cross-legged in front of him, like acolytes eager to study at the feet of their priest. Jesus pointed to an empty spot on the marble floor. I hesitated for a moment, feeling the eyes of the other men on me. I started to feel uncomfortable.
"It's okay, little brother. I know the fake Jews have poisoned your mind and planted seeds of doubt in your Israelite soul. It is the blood of your father that fights their teachings," Jesus said.
He seemed to glow with a different kind of light now. He wasn't the same man I'd seen on the street corner, where he was a warrior calling his followers to action. Outside the house, he was a brother welcoming a long-lost sibling home. But here he seemed like a prophet, as if he had spoken directly to God. I couldn't look at him. His presence was too bright. I bowed my head.
"Of all the people who heard my message, it was you whose heart was touched. The blood of your father is strong in you."
"It brought you here, brother," Jesus said. The other men sat with their eyes closed, lost in meditation. Had I stumbled into a cult? A surge of fear shot through me.
"I know the fake Jews you were raised with called you a nigger and mocked the royal black true Hebrew blood that runs in your blessed veins. I know you always felt outcast and alone among them. The most alone you ever felt was when you were in their temples, surrounded by them," Jesus continued. I was confused. How could he know about these things? Who was this man? How do you know?" I stammered. Jesus smiled. "I know because the great Yeshua told me. He said you felt alone because you always knew you were different. You were a lost lamb in a den of wolves," Jesus said.
My heart pounded in my chest. I stumbled over to the spot he had pointed out and sat before him. He smiled down at me. I felt like a blind man seeing the glory of the sun for the first time. He held out his hand. I stared at it for a moment, then leaned forward and pressed my forehead against it in reverence. He had me, and he knew it. He saw my deepest pain and held the key to making it go away. After that meeting, I found myself doubting everything my mother had taught me about being Jewish. Jesus told me that the Jews had started slavery to torture and erase the true Hebrews, that they were behind the suffering of my father's people, and by extension my suffering too. Everything he said about how they hated me rang true. I could recall countless encounters with the European Jews who called me racial slurs or attacked me for simply existing. It all made sense to me. I was living proof of it. As Jesus had said, I always felt out of place, always felt different, but could never pinpoint why. I had spent the last month studying and learning from Brother Jesus. Every day I left his temple, I hated the European Jews more. Every encounter in my life with them was tainted by their disdain for my father's blood. I wanted them to pay. They couldn't get away with what they had done to my people, to me. "We have to make them pay, Brother Jesus," I said during my daily meeting at the temple. This place had become like a second home to me. My mother had been curious at first about where I was spending my time, but when I told her I'd found some black Jewish people, she smiled. All she wanted was for me to feel accepted somewhere. She knew I struggled with fitting in. Whatever misgivings she had, she kept to herself. She was just happy that I was happy. Sometimes I wished she had asked more questions about the people I was spending time with. I could never lie to my mother. I don't blame her for what I was starting to become. I knew she wanted me to find my way, to find a place where I wasn't just the half-black Jewish kid. "We will, Brother Ben. I have a special task for you. As I've told you many times, you are our chosen one," Brother Jesus replied, patting me on the head. Over the past month, they'd treated me like a hero, like a long-lost saviour who had set them free. I was their New Age muser, destined to lead the Hebrews from bondage once again. I was so blinded by their acceptance and praise that I didn't see that they were using me. Maybe I truly was cursed, the seed of a cursed man, the apple that fell too close to the root of a vile tree. "Saturday morning we will send a message loud and clear to the fake European Jews. It's time for us to reclaim our heritage and let the world know we will no longer be denied what's ours," Brother Jesus said. I smiled. I would finally get to make them pay for all their hate, for all the times they cursed me for being half-black. I would get my revenge. I would be the one to strike the blow. I was the chosen one. My heart raced as I walked into the temple. I could hardly breathe. I watched as all the white men and women who claimed to be Jews entered. I didn't realize how much I hated them until Jesus came into my life. I had buried the racial slurs and the pain of being outcast because I was half-black. I took their insults and hate, thinking it was the right thing to do. I endured their bullying because the world told people like me to turn the other cheek, and punished those who fought back against oppression. I was a slave, and I didn't even know it. I had been their biracial whipping boy. I never saw how bad it truly was until Jesus opened my eyes. Why would I have seen it? It was all I'd ever known. It was like asking a slave born into bondage what freedom was like. He wouldn't know. He hardly thought of freedom. I was the same way. Their hate and rejection were all I'd ever known. I thought it was a normal part of life for Jewish half-breeds like me. But the reality was, they were the imposters. I was the true Jew, and they knew it. They hated me for being God's chosen. No matter how much they pretended to be of the true Hebrew blood, they never could truly be. Hebrews were of the bloodline of my Israeli mother, the amazing woman who was kicked out of Israel for not agreeing with the Zionist agenda, and of my black, deadbeat father, who was taught that he was just a descendant of slaves and nothing more. Deep down they knew they were imposters, and that's why they hated me. But today, they would pay. all of their slurs and hate would come back to burn them. They would feel the sting and pain they had inflicted on me just for existing. I didn't ask to be born biracial. I didn't ask to be of the true Hebrew blood and thus be hated. I just wanted to live. I just wanted to be like every other kid. My mother didn't deserve the hate she got. She didn't deserve the pain and rejection from her community for falling in love with a black man. She didn't deserve to be abandoned by him and left to struggle in an anti-black world with a half-breed son. The Bible says that the devil was the most beautiful of angels, an angel of light. He shows himself to men as that same angel of light. These white Jews were the devil. They pretended to be holy and good, but all they did was evil. They hid behind smiles and false piety. I sat and watched as they greeted each other, their pale European faces beaming with the privilege of those who didn't have a care in the world, who had not truly suffered. I wondered if that's why they clung to the horrors of the Holocaust, horrors that actual Israeli Jews were saved from, horrors that happened to European Jews at the hands of other Europeans. I've never been their oppressor. Black people had never done anything to Jews. Yet for some odd reason, they hated black people and half-breeds alike, but loved their fellow white man who had oppressed them. Jesus had taught me so much. I couldn't believe I was so lost before. They smiled and shook each other's hands as they came in, like cockroaches gathering around a fresh pile of garbage. "Benji?" a woman's voice asked. I took a deep breath. Why did she have to come? She never comes to the temple. Of all the days she chose today. I pretended not to hear her. She was beautiful, and I wasn't sure I could follow through if I looked at her. She was a young Israeli girl from my mother's land. Her eyes were soft, deep brown like autumn leaves. I secretly loved her. I'd imagined marrying her. "Benji?" she said again. I shuddered. She wasn't the enemy. She wasn't like these fake Jews. She wasn't European. She couldn't be here. I turned to her, unable to hide the fear and anxiety in my eyes. "Leave now," I whispered. She looked at me. Oh, she was so beautiful. Her long brown hair fell to her slender shoulders. Her skin seemed kissed with a light brown hue. Her full, inviting lips and her beautiful face furrowed, thinking I was insulting her. She stared into my eyes for a moment, then nodded. She understood something was not right. She didn't know what, but it was enough to make her leave. I sighed deeply. I couldn't bear to hurt her. The doors of the temple were starting to close. I could see the brothers of Jesus hurrying to get out of the temple. They were to chain the doors shut. Not even me. I wouldn't want to escape anyway. I couldn't face my mother with what I'd done. I couldn't bear to see the disappointment in her eyes, knowing her son was a terrorist. I wanted her to remember me as the boy who just wanted to fit in. The boy who loved his mother and cried when he was called a half-breed. I didn't want her to know me as the freedom fighter I'd become. Brother Jesus had warned me that most wouldn't understand the mission I was called to. All the prophets and chosen of God were once mocked and called crazy. It wasn't until long after their missions were completed, and they had passed, that people started to understand. This was no different. They would call me a terrorist and claim I had some Islamic influence, instead of seeing the truth. I was a biracial boy, hated and bullied by the white Jewish community, a community I was raised in. I was Jewish myself, yet I'd been lied to my entire life about who I was. They would never see it. Everyone was seated. Brother Jesus and his disciples stood outside the temple, blocking anyone else from coming in. Whatever security this temple had, they had taken them out. I knew this would be my last day on earth. My last day as a biracial boy that everyone hated. Strangely, I was okay with that. I smiled and walked between the aisles. The temple had long rows of cushioned seats, separated by a gap down the middle for people to walk. I stood in the gap and stared at everyone. They were so foolish, so secure in their privilege and false identity as God's chosen, that they couldn't fathom the explosives planted throughout the temple and under many of the seats they now occupied. "You have all mocked me, called me a half-breed, and said I did not belong here," I shouted. Everyone turned to look at me. Some sneered in disgust. Others shook their heads in disbelief. "My mother is a true Jew from Israel. The blood of the ancient Hebrews runs through her veins, and thus mine," I began.
"Sit down, Benji," a man shouted.
"Now is not the time for this," a woman called out. "Now is the time," I yelled back. "You call yourself Jews, but you're filled with racism and hate. You've made it clear my entire life that I am not welcome here because of my father's black blood. You are imposters, lost European pretenders, whose fragile egos can't survive without claiming superiority over everyone," I continued.
"Go home, Benji. You're making a fool of yourself," a man shouted.
"If I were your mother, I would be ashamed," a woman added. Their responses angered me. "You have the nerve to deny how you've treated me, even sitting in this temple?" I roared.
"May God burn you all in hell!"
I pulled the detonator out of my pocket and held it up for them all to see. "What is that?" a man asked. People began to scramble, rushing to the doors. "The doors are chained!" a man shouted. I felt powerful watching them run and cower before me. I was no longer the half-breed son of a black man. I was the one holding their lives in my hands. I couldn't stop smiling. Was I evil? Why did I enjoy their fear and horrors so much? "Beg God for forgiveness!" I shouted. Time seemed to slow as I pulled the trigger on the detonator. I was committed now. If I let go of the trigger, they would all be dead. Their blood would stain my soul as I faced God in the afterlife. Strangely, I thought of the Israeli girl my mother wanted me to marry, of the kids we could have had, and the life we could have lived. I wondered how much better things would have been if I wasn't biracial, if I were fully Israeli like my mother. Was it her fault that I now stood here? That I was about to blow this temple to hell, along with the hundreds of fake Jews inside? She chose to lay with my black father. She chose to give birth to me. She didn't think about the life I would live, or how I would suffer. But then again, how could she have known? I couldn't help but cry as I thought about my life. "Forgive me, Mother," I whispered. I couldn't hear the screams around me, the shouts of people kicking at the chain doors, the mothers holding their children and singing songs to God. I didn't care to see the pain and fear in their eyes. I was as deaf and blind to them as they had been to me. I brought the trigger close to my chest, took a deep breath, and pulled it. For a moment there was dead silence. Time stood still. It seemed like the whole world was watching this unfold, waiting with bated breath for the explosion. The faces of the European Jews who hated me for existing were frozen in fear and rage. Then, like the cold hand of death, the silence was shattered by a massive explosion. The entire temple rocked, followed by more explosions. People screamed and died in front of me. Blood and debris fell from the temple ceiling like rain. I fell to my knees, cupping my ears. The explosions were deafening. I closed my eyes. Maybe I was wrong. All this death and destruction because they hated the black blood in me seemed excessive now. I couldn't watch as people died. their limbs missing, blood pouring from them. I didn't want to see the children dismembered and mangled by the bombs and the horror I had unleashed. "Take me now," I prayed, begging God to end me, to let one of the bombs hit me. I knew I couldn't live with all this death on my hands. Feeling rage and pain from being hurt by a community was normal and natural, but killing them all was demonic. Jesus was wrong. No man of God, no prophet would do such a thing. His pure heart could not endure the pain and suffering of others. My pain had made me a terrorist. If I didn't die here, my life was over either way. "Please, God," I begged. As if answering my prayer, something hard struck my head. I smiled as I embraced the darkness. Maybe God did love me. Maybe he had forgiven me enough to take me from this world, to save me from the pain and consequences of what I had done. It hurt to breathe. I could feel the heat of fire all around me. Am I dead? Is this hell? If it was, I knew I deserved it. I didn't care much about the adults I'd killed, but the children were innocent. I had no doubt they would grow up to be just as racist and hateful as their parents. But they weren't that yet. They were just kids. I couldn't see. Was I blind? The darkness around me was so complete that this had to be death. I could hear screams and pleas as people burned alive. I could hear the prayers of women calling out to God to save them. What have I done? How could this be the will of God, this pain and suffering? I was no prophet, no chosen one. I was just a terrorist. "Oh, God!" I started. But dust and debris flooded my mouth as soon as I opened it. I started to cough. I wanted to scream from the pain. I had to be in hell. Jesus had fooled me. He was probably laughing at me right now. The idiot biracial boy he played like a fiddle. He played upon my hate and rage for being rejected. He played upon my need to be included. Now here I am in hell, while he is living and mocking me. I'd been so foolish. I wondered if my mother would visit my grave, if she would even acknowledge me. I wouldn't blame her if she disowned me. Who would want a terrorist as a son? I heard more screams. I tried to move, but my limbs wouldn't respond. A fresh wave of pain shot through my body every time I tried. I could feel the fire getting closer. My heart raced in my aching chest. I didn't want the flames to touch me. "My baby! Yahweh, please save her!" I heard the cry of a mother. My heart felt like a knife was passing through it, like the devil stabbed me and then pulled the blade out slowly before ramming it back in. Her voice was so full of pain. Even here in hell with me, she prayed for her child. Would my mother pray for her terrorist son? I bet this grieving woman was willing to sign away her soul for the sake of the child that shared her womb. The fires were getting closer. I could feel the flames teasing my feet. I screamed in pain. "You hear that?" I heard someone say. I heard the heavy thudding of footsteps as something approached. I was in hell, wasn't I? I was dead. I was sure of it. I could hear them digging through the rock and rubble. "There's someone here!" I heard a man shout. A bright light pierced the darkness. My eyes teared up. There was someone in front of me, but my vision was too blurry to see clearly. "You're going to be okay, son," the man's voice said. But would I? Did he know what I'd done? That the death and destruction around us was by my hand? Surely he didn't. If he did, he would leave me here in this hell. He would leave me to the flames and the wails of the damned. I deserved it. "Leave me!" I gasped. Each word erupted from my lips with blood. Pain coursed through me. I wanted to punch this man, to explain to him that I was evil, that I belonged here, that I wasn't worth saving. I felt rough hands on me, and I screamed in pain as they pulled me from the rubble.
"I think this is him,"
a man said. The man's fist landed hard on my face. I think he broke my nose. I couldn't feel the pain. I smiled and laughed as blood dripped from me. This is what I deserved. I think I was losing my mind. I couldn't stop laughing. The man hit me several more times. I'm certain he and the others would claim they found me this way, that my beaten and swollen face was part of my wounds from the bombing. I must have blacked out. I woke up in the hospital, handcuffed and shackled to the bed. My head hurt, and my entire body ached. What had they done to me? I could see, but my face was so swollen it was like peering through water. I was sure I looked like the demon I was. I felt a gentle hand on mine. "Benji?" I recognized the voice. It was my mother. For some reason, her voice broke me. The pain hit me hard as I cried. The tears stung the many wounds on my face. "Don't say anything to them, Benji. You have a lawyer. I got the best one in town," my mother said. I sighed, hearing the pain in her voice. Struggle as she tried to seem strong while looking at her son, mangled and barely alive. Knowing that if I did survive I would rot in some cell somewhere, I was sure I'd probably receive several more beatings from law enforcement. For some reason, this country loved the white Jews. No matter how racist and vile they were, America and its Christians loved them. No matter how many children they slaughtered in Palestine, they were loved. No matter how many pregnant Palestinian women they killed and then made shirts saying, "1 shot, 2 kills," they were loved. No matter how many mass graves of the victims of their brutality and genocide, they were still loved. I, the half-black Jewish boy, didn't stand a chance. I had hit them in their heart, in the one place where they felt safe. I had done to them what they had done to me my entire life. But no one would care. No one would want to know my side of the story. They would play the victims while hiding their hands on the world stage, like they always did. I would probably get the death penalty. I would ask for it. There was no life for me anymore. I knew my mom didn't have a lot of money, and I didn't want her to waste her life savings over me. I deserved my fate. "No lawyer," I gasped in pain. I could feel my mother staring at me. I was still a minor, so she had the right to be here. I was glad that my face was too swollen to see the pain and horror on hers. "Why, Benji?" my mother asked. Her voice cracked. I knew it must be killing her to hold in her pain. She was always my rock, my anchor that kept me from being lost in the ocean of hate. I wasn't sure if her question was about why I didn't want the lawyer, or why I did what I did. "Why did you make me, Mom?" I asked. I knew this wasn't fair to her. She had no idea that my black father would leave her. She had no clue what was in store for me or any other biracial child. "You cursed me to be biracial," I said between painful gasps. I could feel her hand shaking on mine. She knew that I struggled to fit in, that I had been bullied by the white Jewish community my entire life. I didn't blame her, but I wanted to hurt her so she would leave. I was no longer her little Benji. I never would be again. I didn't want her to see me this way. "Let me die, Mom," I pleaded. I could feel my mom's heart breaking. No matter what I did, she would never forget the days I kicked her in her womb, the tears she wept as she talked to me, and how her heart broke when my father left us. But she decided to be the best mom she could be to me. She had gone out of her way to let me know I was half black. She bought me movies and taught me black history. She even enrolled me in camps for black boys without fathers. I did not deserve this amazing woman. She had no clue those fatherless black boys would bully me for being a half-breed. Her heart was too kind to comprehend this. I never told her. I didn't want the guilt of it to plague her. But now, I needed this woman to let me go, to let me rot like I deserved. I never saw my mother again. She has tried to see me, but I've refused to see her. They tried me as an adult and sentenced me to death. I would be the youngest person in my state to receive the death penalty. I didn't turn on Jesus and his crew. They had released a manifesto that did me justice. They spoke about the racist bullying I'd received at the hands of the white Jewish community, of my struggles of being biracial and not fitting in. They had leaked it with video of me preparing. They even had the moments before I pressed the detonator. From what I heard, everyone online was discussing me. Many sided with me. Biracials everywhere were finding the strength to stand up and tell their stories. I am to die today. I can die knowing my death had meaning, that it gave the normally voiceless biracial a voice. "You ready, Ben?" the guard said. This guard had been nice to me. He didn't beat me like the others. Even though I knew I was going to die, I didn't fight them back. I deserved the pain. I deserved the torture. I had murdered kids. Besides, the pain reminded me that I was not a demon, that there was some humanity left in me. I nodded and stood. I took one last look at the cell that had housed me in my final days. It was cold and dark, but fitting for what I had done. I wondered how many other men had stood here like me and took their last glimpses of their home. Oddly, it did not feel strange to think of this cell as home. The guard cuffed me and took me out of my cell. Several other guards stood around me. "I'm going to look forward to seeing you die," one of the guards whispered in my ear. Another spat on my face. They knew I couldn't wipe it. My hands were cuffed behind my back. I had to just deal with it. I felt it slide down my cheek and drip on the floor. "Did I blow up one of your family members?" "If so, I'll see them in hell soon," I told the guard. He pulled out his baton and was preparing to strike me. I laughed at him. "I'm walking to my death, you fucking racist buffoon. There's nothing you can do to hurt me," I said. I locked eyes with the guard. I felt something in him recoil. Maybe I was a demon after all. Or maybe it was the cold certainty of knowing I only had a few moments left of life. I might as well already be a corpse. The guard hesitated and put his baton away. "There's something not quite right about this boy," the guard mumbled and got back in formation. I couldn't help but laugh as they walked me to the execution room. I couldn't stop laughing even if I tried. A guard pounded on the door to my execution chamber. It took a moment, but the door opened. I was walked into a white room. There was a hospital bed with straps on it. I couldn't help the shiver that went down my spine. I would die right there. I wondered how many people knew the exact spot and the way they would die. The guards uncuffed me and put me on the bed. My heart raced as they strapped me in. There was a huge window in front of me. I knew members of the media and my victims' families were there. I could see the grim looks on their faces. Watching me die seemed equivalent to watching Hitler die. These dumb Jews wanted to be the victims so badly that they really thought I attacked them simply because they were playing at being Jewish. I am a Jew. My mother is a Jew. I attacked them for their racism and hate, for bullying me, for being biracial my entire life. The nurse's hand trembled as she stuck the needle in my arm and primed the machine. I would have picked the firing squad, but the state didn't want to give me a choice in how I wanted to die. I guess they felt like I didn't deserve that. A death was a death to me. "Do you have any last words?" a guard asked. I nodded. "Biracials are people too. Their lives matter. They are not some abomination. They were created out of your love for someone of a different race. Don't treat us like monsters. Don't hate us for being born mixed. We never asked for this. If you all don't change, there will be more of me. Instead of it being Jews, it may be a black church or a white school. I am the product of your hate. Your loved ones died because of your ignorance and hate." I paused for a moment. "Today I will die because of your bigotry," I said. I nodded at the guard. He nodded at the nurse, and she pressed a button on the machine that held the liquids that would kill me. "I am biracial," I said. I could feel the first fluids enter my veins. I closed my eyes and thought of that beautiful Israeli girl. I thought of her smile, the way she made me feel when she smiled. "That's okay," I whispered. My veins felt hot, like they were on fire, but I did not open my eyes. I did not want to let go of her beautiful face. I couldn't help the tears that streamed down my cheeks. I knew I could have made her happy. Maybe in the next life. It was hard to breathe. My heart felt like it was going to explode. Then, as suddenly as it started, it stopped. "I would have made her happy," I said with my last breath, and smiled.